The phone conversation between fantasy veterans Bob Harris and Matt Waldman is a quick and dirty rundown of players, units, or teams from Sunday's games. Feel it or fuck it is our instant verdict on the fantasy value of a player situation, not the ability, effort, or character of the player. This is just how two old-timers in this industry talk when they got a lot to cover in a little time. Harris!
You woke me up. Wait a minute, man. Hey, Matt Waldman, how's it going, young man?
Pretty good. Though I gotta figure out a way to get looking younger. Probably not. I don't really give a fuck about that.
You look less awake than I feel.
Yeah,
I don't feel very awake.
And I feel pretty awake, so that's an indictment on me. But how about Trey Lance, to the Cowboys? Feeling that?
Feeling it, well, fuck it, because it's going to be a bunch of work, because it's going to be an endless controversy as soon as Dak Prescott's contract comes up, which, is already a point of discussion that Jerry Jones is saying is not a factor, but clearly it will become a factor at some point, whether it's a factor or not. So, look, I mean, I almost want to say kudos to the 49ers for owning up their mistake and moving on. But also, what a fucked up mistake that was. I mean, that's a devastating mistake to an organization that seems to have a lot of these misfires on draft picks. That Trey Sermon would be another one. Or, I mean, not that it was a huge amount of capital expended, but they get Elijah Mitchell much later in that draft, who was a player clearly many people on that staff preferred to Trey Sermon and was a better fit. So, just seems like the scouting and the coaching is at odds. I'll say this though. I mean, if they put that draft capital into Trey Lance, everybody had to sign off on it, whether they were happy about signing off on it or not. Everybody had to be on a similar page. So, I don't know. I have no idea what Trey Lance is. I don't know that anybody does. I could say that of other players who are going to get opportunities at some point. He might, but until he does, fuck him. He's off my radar. All due respect to Trey Lance, until there's a contract issue. I think he will be more a foil for news and discussion than he is a factor on the field.
Yeah, 2025 is when you probably want to start to consider whether or not we're going to really consider that question for Dynasty. So if you have a deep league, deep spot, multiple years for a practice squad, maybe so. But right now, no, you can say fuck it with him. I'll just say this to what you talked about with the coaching and the coaching staff and the scouts, or the GM scouts and coaching staff, because it's really a triangle.
Yes.
And in that realm, I would say this. I remember a day when a certain team drafted Robert Griffin in the first round and then turned right around and picked Kirk Cousins later. And it was very clearly stated that was a Mike Shanahan selection. And then 2 years later, they used Shanahan. Shanahan used Griffin in a way that prompted me to write the denigration of a first-round draft pick, and show schematically how they pretty much screwed Robert Griffin. And then when his ass got fired, he basically complained about what Daniel Jones put Robert Griffin up to
Daniel Snyder.
Daniel Snyder did, to put Robert Griffin up to, asking Shanahan about, working with him in the offseason to make him more of a pocket quarterback, and that he wanted input in the offense, where Shanahan did the whole, but, nobody asked that. This poor kid, he didn't know. This got put up to him when I promptly asked scouts. They're like, no, 90% of the league has always allowed their young quarterback input. So, I know that the sins of the father may not be the sins of the son, but I would say in this case, the apple, I don't think falls far from the tree, and I would not be shocked we find out in several years that Lynch and Shanahan were at loggerheads a lot with their picks.
I like that. I'm also feeling the low-key throwing 15-year-old Danny Dimes under the bus there by bringing him into the conversation.
That was the subconscious. That's like the whole Freudian, when you're supposed to say, when someone asks you, you're supposed to say, please pass the butter. And Robin Williams said that, a good example of Freudian slip is, please, instead of saying, please pass the butter, you say, you fucking bitch, you ruined my life.
Yes.
Or asshole, or whoever it is, But anyway, Jayden Reed's role as a slot receiver who can play multiple roles. Does this make him more appealing in redrafts as a rookie?
Nah, fuck that. Does not make him more appealing. He's a little too far down the tree for me. I'm looking for paths to workload. Maybe he has one. There are other pieces there that are obviously of greater interest, but like I'm not totally dismissive of anybody in this offense. I'm going to spring some players on you that are breakout candidates here later. But I'll spring one on you now. Jordan Love, feel him as a breakout candidate.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm feeling the idea of that just because he's had multiple years to kind of watch and put things together, and I actually think that may be a good thing for a player like him. But at the same time, I'll say this: I still I know a lot of people want Luke Musgrave to be a thing this year right away.
He looks thingish to me.
He does have some, he's got that speed, he's got that size, and I think that he can be helpful. But I think the idea that he's a top 10 player as a better bargain than, say, a Dalton Kincaid. I'll just say this. I'll put this publicly. I looked at Matthew Berry's newsletter this morning, and I believe probably it was Dwayne who wrote the newsletter, and he wrote about Dalton Kincaid is probably not as good of a bet to be top 10 tight end as Musgrave. So I actually wrote Dwayne and challenged and actually issued a bet over dinner, saying if Kincaid's a top 10 tight end, he owes me dinner. If he's not, I owe him dinner.
Well, I'm going to cash in on that dinner if you win, because I'm just going to take over because I'm closer to him than you are.
I don't know. It may just behoove me to drive out there or fly out there, at some point. So
fair enough. But for me, I'll just say, Musgrave has not much been on my radar. I maybe have a few best ball shares, certainly not in redraft, and the same with Reed and redraft and best ball. There are some shares of Reed because I do believe Jordan Love has shown indicatia, as the academics would say, of potentially being a breakout candidate.
Yeah, and the reason I like Reed maybe a little bit more as a late round pick than others is that I think he can play those multiple roles, and he's going to see a lot of underneath opportunities if this team does falter some. And I think Reed will be good enough for fantasy, but maybe for reality, that's going to be another year of adjustment, and he's going to be playing a lot from behind. I think there's going to be a lot of garbage games, and Jayden Reed is going to be a sanitation engineer, a special. So we shall see. Tyquan Thornton, he's likely beginning his time on IR.
Damn it.
All right, who are you feeling more to replace him, Bourne or Boutte?
Bourne. Because rookies in New England... That's pretty much it. But I mean, I've heard good things about Boutte, but I've also heard really good things about Bourne. Some of it from Bill Belichick, who isn't going out of his way to dole out compliments and has doled out some on Bourne, who seems to be on. Maybe the change of coordinators there, or change to a coordinator would be a more accurate way to put it. Is going to serve a lot of people well, and maybe Bourne is one of them. Maybe Boutte too. I will say Boutte has been kind of early mixed words, but it seems to have trended more positive there as well. So I'll lean Bourne on this one just for the fact that he's a veteran.
Fuck it, Bob. I agree with you. And I think that's the thing, is that he's also more an outside receiver, whereas Boutte's probably best on the inside. So Bourne can do both. Boutte can do a little bit of both, but to replace Thornton, the big play guy, Bourne's probably it. So staying in New England, kind of, and taking the train further west. Pierre Thomas got sent on that train to Cleveland. Pierre Strong, excuse me. Pierre Thomas. Man, only if Pierre Strong was Pierre Thomas. I would say if Pierre Strong was Pierre Thomas with speed, look out. But should Jerome Ford GMs be worried about Strong's presence in Cleveland?
They should be worried about Ford's hamstring. I mean, assuming the hamstring is fine, no, they should not be worried about that. Although, Strong is a little bit of a different piece, right? So maybe they're, we're always worried about someone coming in and being the receiving threat to, the Kareem Hunt-like threat here. And Jerome Ford wasn't that. We have high hopes for Nick Chubb having more of a more robust role than he has, which has been pretty robust. By the way, remember that crazy guy who, back in the rookie year of Nick Chubb, said he would be better than Saquon Barkley? I'm not sure who that was, but
I just like RB3s better than RB1s, I guess. That's what it is.
But anyway,
shout out to my friend Greg. All right.
So interesting thought here, though. And talk to Steve King, who covers the Browns daily, has for many years now with the Browns Daily Dose. He thinks that everybody else is a distant second to Chubb right now, and so I'm going to view it as that. And Ford more of a handcuff type than a compliment type, and maybe Strong can be a little bit of compliment. One other thing about what Steve King said to me, because I think people want to hear this, asked him this and pressed him on it. He said this offense is going to run through 3 players, and that's no surprise. It's 3 players. It's Deshaun Watson, it's Nick Chubb, and it's Elijah Moore. Not Amari Cooper? No, Elijah Moore. He said they're scheming up. They're going to use him in a variety of ways. Amari Cooper is still the wide receiver 1, is still going to be very good, but he's not going to be, they're going out of their way to make Elijah Moore a vital piece of this offense. So I thought that was interesting.
That's cool. And I'm hoping, usually when we estimate things like that, I think the way you should be drafting these days is you should be placing your bet the offense is going to be placed around Nick Chubb, and Nick Chubb. I think we're looking at if you're thinking about players who may have rookie level, record-breaking potential for their season, not just RB1 or QB1, I think Mahomes and Chubb are the 2 guys that you should be looking at and saying they have a shot to break a record this year in terms of.
I think people are starting to draft Chubb like that, just in the recent drafts that I've been in.
Yeah. So, all right. Yeah, I'm feeling Jerome's Ford hamstring is probably the issue more than whether it's Pierre Strong, and I wouldn't be surprised if Pierre Strong is used very much only on like toss plays, outside runs, and maybe a screen play here and there. He needs to show a little bit more. And if he had, they probably wouldn't have been looking for a replacement to him like they were this offseason in New England. Michael Wilson, another rookie. So is he going to – they say he's going to be part of 4 receiver sets. Does that make him draftable to you?
I want to feel this so bad. But most likely this is a fuck it, just given the overall offense and all. I do think a dynasty Michael Wilson is a piece. When you're looking at a receiving core and one of these pieces is not like the other, sometimes I think that's worth noting, and he is not like the others.
Yeah, I think he's a good waiver wire Rolodex player, or if you like taking chances after the 15th round, that Michael Wilson should be on your radar as one of those guys you consider post 15th round as, whether it's going to be Reed or Wilson, somebody like that, or Sean Tucker, who we may talk about a little bit later. Those are some guys that are worthwhile to consider. But yeah, otherwise, much more a dynasty prospect at this point, because we've got to remember too that preseason for wide receivers, a lot of things that people get hyped up about are the nice catches, or he's working with the first team, or winning on 2-way go routes that are actually like weighed significantly in favor of the wide receiver. As the season begins, the things that people start to miss, and I'm saying like beat reporters and fantasy folks of our ilk, is that those route adjustments between quarterback and wide receiver. Like, think of Romeo Doubs making a play every day in the preseason, and then late in the preseason, Aaron Rodgers is like, if these rookies don't get on the same page with me with adjustments pre-post snap, they're not going to get a lot of playing time. And then Doubs, you kind of see he was very much schemed up to where it's like little throwouts, things like that. Not a lot of one-on-ones where Rodgers is going, I can count on you to run the right route, versus the defense we're watching here, because his head's swimming. Doubs' head's still probably swimming from looking at the defense and going, is that a cover 2 or is that quarters? Is that man-to-man or is this a zone? Or what side of the field is this man-to-man and zone? So I'm looking at Wilson and thinking, smart kid, but it might take him a year.
Yep.
Will Levis and Malik Willis, they're in a tight competition for quarterback too. Are you feeling either player's future as a starter? Not this year, but down the line.
Well, first of all, I'm fucking feeling Ryan Tannehill all of a sudden. It's maybe I mean, Willis has shown progress, right, from rookie to now. I mean, not that it was a high bar. He needed to show some progress, but he has.
Yeah.
And again, sometimes I peruse this thing called the rookie scouting portfolio, and I know one Matt Waldman is not particularly high on Mr. Will Levis, and my shares of Stetson Bennett. Thank you for that.
I don't know right now. Well, Stetson's not playing great, but it's early.
Right, it's early, but at least the path is there. Where the path is not there, I think Willis is certainly an obstacle in the path right now. I would go Willis then Levis at the moment, but maybe they don't have their quarterback of the future right now.
Yeah, me too. I think I feel like Willis was a better prospect than Levis. Like Willis was a draftable prospect. I didn't think Levis was a draftable prospect in
you hate Will
based
Levis.
on my grade. I hate his game right now, but I have nothing personal against Will Levis. You know. Now Michael Irvin talking about that you should catch balls with your chest. You know, on First Take. Apparently, someone sent me a First Take piece about that, and Richard Sherman was about to have like a conniption fit. You know, listening to Mike. You know, now that might be fun carnival. I'll put it that way. Josh Jacobs signing his deal. Does it increase his value? Or are you feeling the heightened potential for injury because he's been gone from training camp?
Feel both, right? I mean, yeah, I feel increased value more than let me go ahead and throw this out one more time for the people out there who may be joining in. I'm injury agnostic. I do not fear injuries before they happen, right? I'm just not gonna draft like that. I look at the top of just take the first round, you know, based on current ADP. And pretty much everyone on that list has been hurt. I think there's 2 or 3 guys who have not. One of them is Bijan Robinson because he's never played in the NFL. Another is Justin Jefferson. Beyond that, I think everyone has missed games, and everyone's going to miss games. So I don't draft like that. I do think, you know, that I'm very grateful for my 3rd-round Josh Jacobs shares and the couple of 4th-round shares that I've gotten while there was this perceived uncertainty, which I don't think, you know, I never felt was all that uncertain. I keep saying this, but, you know, the only reason we could say this never happened, that somebody never held out, is because Le'Veon Bell made a bad mistake, and which he acknowledges now, right? Like, and so never seemed likely that Josh Jacobs was not going to sign. So I've been hammering that value as a value, and I think I'll make out for it. And is he going to get 340 carries? Probably not. That's a lot of carries. 300 will be just fine. Thank you very much.
I'm feeling Josh Jacobs where you can get him with absolute certainty, you know, about that you should take him there. Now, you know, yeah, possibility gets hurt. I think I've projected for 15 games, you know, and I'll project a little bit differently than I rank. But that's, you know, to me, 15 games is good. You know, if you're running back playing 15 games, you had a pretty good year.
Let's put it this way, Matt. If last year he was a rental car, a 1-year rental, because they didn't pick up his option that they felt they could run the wheels off, he's now a highly paid 1-year rental that they certainly are going to want to. I don't think their plans for him go beyond this year, you know, based on what we saw. So, and maybe they do, but I mean, preserving him, I don't see the point of that. So, onward and upward for young Josh Jacobs. And always, volume is the double-edged sword of fantasy football. We need it it's the wellspring of points. That's how we score. Also, there's more opportunities to get hurt. That's just how it is.
Yeah. You know, that's why you draft a shit ton of running backs during your drafts. That and wide receivers, you know, that's one way to go. So Tarik Cohen, speaking of injured guys who hadn't played all year last year and looked like he was still dealing with that a rough recovery from an Achilles tear, he says he's fully recovered and he's ready to work out for teams. Are you feeling a comeback? You know, are we looking at a Donta Foreman situation, or are we looking more at a Mikel LeSure, or does it really even matter to you right now until he gets on a roster?
Who? No.
Yeah, see, there we go. There we go. Answer given.
Wishing the young man well, don't have high expectations.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I mean, you know, can he be a Devin A-Chain type of player? Absolutely. You know, a more advanced version of that, really, or a Deuce Vaughn-esque type of player.
Has to be in the right spot and in the right opportunity, and a lot of moving pieces here. Not the least of which is his. You know, is he fully recovered?
This is me with one of those questions that Bob Harris is thinking, why don't you fucking ask that like 8 weeks from now when we've had a bunch of injuries and he's actually on a team? Then we
can look back on this moment at that point in time.
Yeah. So Sean Tucker, though, he's earning first team reps with Rachaad White. Is he draftable?
No, but he should be on your short list. He should be on your short list of he should be on your watch list for free agency. You should look and see. Look, I'm not 100% sold on Rachaad White. I know there are people out there, I have seen them on my Twitter, who think he is the best thing since sliced bread. And there are people who believe that he is not. And I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't have a strong opinion on him. I hope that they, throw him some passes. I don't think his running numbers were all that great. I don't think the offensive line is all that great. I don't know how great this offense is going to be. So I have plenty of questions, but I do see a clear path to workload, at least initially. And if Sean Tucker cuts into that, like we all know, Sean Tucker was really good. College had the heart issue. It seemed to put people off. And, the Buccaneers paid him a lot of money as an undrafted free agent. It's a position where nice things can happen. But banking on them to happen as a fantasy manager is probably not a route to sure success.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting if Rachaad White is bread's kind of like cake. It's just really just a disguised version of cake. But Sean Tucker is maybe a little more like steak.
True.
So, or maybe an elk steak. So I don't know. I'm digging Tucker. But again, we've listed Wilson, Jayden Reed, and Tucker. They're all that you're picking one of these guys for your end of your draft at best.
Some we've talked about a little bit here, and I talk about a lot, is making the shift from best ball mode mindset to redraft mindset. These are best ball plays, right?
Yes.
To me, and if you're still playing, if you're jumping into your best ball mania 4s or whatnot, sure. Keep these guys on your radar as those last round flyers, those dart tosses that might differentiate you a little bit in a large field tournament. But if you're playing in a single fantasy league where,
they're for your waiver wire Rolodex.
Waiver wire Rolodex.
This is my master plan to get people.
I know what
thinking
you're up to.
I know what
you're
waiver
up to.
wire Rolodex so that they can be ahead of the game. When somebody goes down or somebody something happens, they not play well, and they go, what was that guy they were talking about? Let's see if we can get him a little bit earlier, or I can make a strong bid to the hole on that. So Adam Harstead, he targets players with injuries that may cost them the first 1 to 3 weeks of the season. That's what he was telling me. Like, he doesn't worry about Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's not worried about guys that may miss the first 3 weeks. To him, it's a bargain because the first 3 weeks don't really matter from his statistical mindset of odds of winning a championship. The biggest portion of winning a championship is the playoffs and the championship game. So why not get the players who are going to be ready for that? So with that in mind, are you feeling that explanation of Harstead's that that it's worthwhile targeting some players, even if you take 2 or 3 of them, who are going to be out for the first week or two? Do you mind the idea of going 0-3 or 1-2 or 0-4 and working your way out of that?
Well, fuck the 0-4 part, but the basic premise, I think, like this is the whole idea. This is how you win at fantasy football, is by acquiring players at much cheaper prices than the production they'll deliver. And players like that are ideal candidates to do that. Why? Because they're not going to deliver anything early in the draft. Yet late down the season, they might give you, top end of their position production at bargain prices. And that's the you're looking for the right ratio, though, of, like there's some players like, I think a great example right now is Breece Hall with Dalvin Cook there. Right. So, Breece Hall had been going way too early most of the offseason. Yes. Then he dropped down. Well, he still only dropped down like 4th round. Well, who am I drafting? Breece Hall in the 4th round, knowing that maybe it's off to a slow start, or Dalvin Cook in the 6th or 7th round. I'm going to get Dalvin Cook in the 7th round, 6th round.
Yeah.
Right. I'm taking the value there and hoping for the best. And like, I think worst case scenario, I mean, the Jets seem to think they have a championship window here. They paid Dalvin Cook high end money to come in there, $7 million. I mean, for a running back, $8 million with incentives. That's good money for a running back at this point in time.
Yeah.
So like a player like Breece Hall, maybe a little less interested in. Javonte Williams, maybe a little more, but the price has risen. So and before, when the price was lower, I didn't have as much clarity as I needed to make a good decision. I didn't feel so. But generally speaking, like Alvin Kamara, I think is a great example right now of a player who has a finite 3-game absence coming, who's going still at a super reasonable price based on what his upside is when he returns.
Yeah, see, for me, when you mention those 3 guys, this is where the feel it or fuck it gets kind of all entangled up here, because to me, Breece Hall is a fuck it situation, mainly because the way that, I'm looking at the statistical of what Adam says, and I agree with that. I'm feeling what he's saying. But when I look at the individual scenario of what his anecdotals, what I've seen anecdotally over 20 years with running backs and wide receivers, is are they going to trust how that leg to play the way that they play? And right. I just think that's tough, especially when he said right now, I don't trust my leg to make the cuts that I usually make, and I'm still feeling pain.
Soreness, right?
Yeah,
right.
And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like Josh.
But also, the price kind of is the determining factor there, in that he's more expensive still than Cook makes it an easy call for me. But some of those other ones are dicier.
And Cook was still playing just fine. So if someone like Rich, I'm not blaming Rich Cimini for saying what he said. But, he gives a good example of saying, well, Dalvin Cook's had 2 down years in a row. Rather, instead of looking at the stats, you might want to look at it in another perspective, is he had a peak year 2 years ago, and he's had over 1,100 yards the past 2 years,
right,
and has been a strong fantasy player nonetheless. So has he really, one paints a picture that someone could read that and say he's declining and he's not as good as he once was. And the other could be he wasn't as productive, but he's still as good as he's been. And when we talk about production, a good example of that, because I'll take Cook too, is you said Kamara. Listen, Kamara has been averaging less than 4 yards per carry, the past couple of years, I think. And people love that whole yards per carry thing to the point that they sometimes don't realize how variable that stat really is on production. And now if you look at the offensive line of the Saints, it's been bad for the past 2 years. Last year is due more to injury than the quality of play. This year it's supposed to be good. And right. if you're trusting me on the idea that if the Saints stay healthy, and they have thus far, this could be the surprise offense of the NFL, really. But I think they're going to win the NFC South.
It's a super winnable league. It's a super winnable division, number one. And number two, exactly what you're saying. I think Derek Carr is maybe a little bit underrated commodity there. Coming in there, certainly a huge upgrade over what they had.
Yeah, and with that O-line being much better, Kamara, to me, don't blame Kamara for the low yards per carry so much. I think he's going to wind up being a player you're going to love to pick, at the discount you're getting him. So I'm sorry to interrupt you about that. I just got excited about the Saints. I don't know. I'm thinking beignets probably. That's what's going on.
Well, after I watched Jimmy Graham turn into like Back from the Future Jimmy Graham last night, I'm like, I'm all into no. Jimmy Graham. I hope he makes the team. But a lot of good pieces there in that offense. And I do think that this is a team that probably I want to have investments in across the board, and I do. And most recently, Juwan Johnson, who I've been happily drafting for 3 years, waiting for him to turn into the thing that I keep thinking he's going to turn into. Just recent chatter with some of the beat writers from there, including Mike Triplett and Catherine Terrell, both, really keen on him. I think Catherine Terrell wrote this last week that he's like emerging as Carr's most reliable weapon, so that kind of over the middle stuff. So a lot to like there.
There goes my Foster Moreau love, but there you go.
Sorry, Foster.
That's all right. So Adam Harstead, we already talked about. Let's talk about Josh Dobbs. Speaking of rocket scientist type minds, I pulled that transition off well because I just
I think you did.
Honestly, I'll tell everybody I just almost repeated the last question.
It's okay,
but Dobbs did study aeronautical engineering. He did get traded to Arizona. This is like his 4th team in a few years. Is he a name to consider off waivers either late in the year, as one of those quarterbacks that we should look at?
Early in the year. More likely early in the year. We'll see. I mean, it seems like Colt McCoy currently the presumptive starter. I know there's been some Clayton Tune chatter, and we'll see. He does have some mobility. Maybe Josh Dobbs has enough of both of those things, quarterbacking ability and mobility, to carve out a little role until Kyler Murray comes back. I'm not advocating rolling out the Cardinals quarterback to fantasy managers at this point in these festivities. Even in like 2 quarterback leagues, and you need a 3rd quarterback, there's enough uncertainty there. If you're in a total emergency, the one who's starting at the moment, is the one who's starting in the moment. That's great, but probably not going to get too excited about any of those pieces. Honestly, not too excited about Kyler Murray either.
Yeah, I'm not excited about Murray and Dobbs. While I think this is more of an indictment against Toon being ready as a youngster, remember that Dobbs is going to have to learn this offense, and it's not like he's had a whole off season to do it. So this doesn't look all that enticing. But then again, Dobbs played pretty well in Tennessee after getting ditched by Cleveland, and then Cleveland snapped him right back up, and now I'm trading him again. I'm wondering if Cleveland's got a weird strategy. I'm going to see if they take him again once he gets dumped in by the Cardinals. Maybe he's like a boomerang. I don't know. Maybe he
Drew Petzing's the offensive coordinator in Arizona. There's some familiarity there.
Yeah, true. So, all right. We already talked about the Saints as the surprise juggernaut of the NFL this year. So
feel that a little bit.
Yeah, Aaron. Adam and I talked about this, and Adam said, running backs, they tend to, we talk about what's not fair for them right now because they're not getting paid as much due to the market, and it used to be different, and now they're maybe complaining about it and expecting that needs to be more. But, back in the day when you and I were growing up, running backs got huge workloads. They were, some of them, guys like Jim Brown were the best athletes on the field, and often the biggest and fastest athlete on the field. So they were kind of freakishly had an advantage. When you're bigger than your offensive lineman, maybe teams looking for the next Jim Brown, or maybe looking for a player or an Earl Campbell or somebody like that. They were, or even Eric Dickerson. They're the guys that had such a huge athletic advantage over the rest that they were worthy of getting paid like that. But Adam's point was maybe we're looking at these guys wrong and saying, are they more valuable than guards and centers? And those guys are getting paid around the same amount running backs are, and those guys maybe have more demands. The counter, I have some counter arguments to that, but I made the statement, and it was kind of a provocative one, where I said, so are you saying, Adam, that RBs are kind of the Karens of the NFL? I'm not saying they're overprivileged white housewives who think they're still back in pre-segregation day, or segregation days, but I'm saying, do running backs think that they're still from their hero days where they were considered worthy of the contracts that they were getting, and now they're complaining about nothing, or they're complaining about things that maybe they shouldn't? What are your thoughts on this? Are they the Karens of the NFL? Did I just trigger you, Bob Harris?
I don't even know if my name's Karen, I'm pretty pissed off at all this kid.
My aunt Karen's probably pissed off about it.
So here's the thing, running backs, and they know what time it is. They know what's going on, and fantasy managers know what's going on. And we can go back and I'll only go back to 1999. Orlando Scary, Mike Anderson in 2000, did it again in 2005. Dominic Davis in 2003. Nick Goings in 2004. Steve Slayton in 2008, Peyton Hillis in 2010, Arian Foster in 2010, Justin Forsett in 2014, C.J. Anderson in 2014, David Johnson in 2015, C.J. Anderson again, rolling off the couch, literally, in 2015, Alex Collins in 2017. We could go more recently, Elijah Mitchell, James Conner, Leonard Fournette, Cordero Patterson, Devin Singletary, Darrell Williams, Jerick McKinnon, Rashad Penny, all backs who weren't necessarily starters, who came on to win somebody a fantasy title and to serve their NFL teams well. The problem for running backs is there's a bus leaving the station every 5 minutes, and it's a different name, but they can do the same things. And I'm sorry that that's how it is, but that is how it is. There's clearly a tier of guys who have a combination of talents that make them a little bit unique. But does it make them enough unique to demand the money they are demanding, given the, and I get their argument too. Their argument is 100% correct. Austin Eckler has way more value to the Chargers offense than that team's third receiver, who probably makes more than Austin Eckler. Yeah. Right. So I get that, and I get the irritation, but I also understand the reality of the situation. And so I could sit here and advocate for running backs, but I don't think anyone in those 32 boardrooms where these decisions are made gives a fuck what I say. So yeah. They're gonna be looking at the bottom line, and that's how this is gonna be dealt with. Yeah. Sorry, running backs.
And I would agree. I totally agree with all that. And I don't think they're the Karens of the NFL, because I don't think they're complaining. I think
yes, you do.
Dealing with a change. No, I don't.
You hate them.
Yes, I do. I hate. Everybody listening knows I hate running backs. But they do take a shit ton of punishment. They do. They get hit more than anybody in the league.
It's literally 20 car collisions a week, man. And I mean, and also I think the length of careers. I mean, it's it's easy for us to sit here and say, well, you're going to make a whole bunch of money. Well, they are going to make a whole bunch of money, relatively speaking, compared to you and I, but also not compared to their peers in the league at other positions, and also their positional value is not long a term of a window. So I understand totally their complaint.
Yeah, I think we're going to put running backs to bed for this preseason at this point. I think I've talked this one out, but those were some great points, Bob Harris. So how about using a no-fly list, in your draft? Do you cross out players and say, nope, not drafting them. I don't care what their value is. They're not even on my board. Some people
Every
do that.
Player at the right price.
There you go. I couldn't say that better. Allen Robinson. So, they say he's earned a slot. He's learned a slot role with Kenny Pickett, and he's been a leader in the locker room. Are you buying the rebound?
It's a trap. I feel like he could rebound, but fuck that deep on that offense right now until I see more. Like the preseason has been very promising, and I'm thoroughly excited about what the possibilities are if Kenny Pickett's really taking a step forward and Deontay Johnson actually starts scoring touchdowns. But I think if you're digging too deep into this offense, you might end up being disappointed. I'm going to stick with at wide receiver, I'm going to stick with the Johnson Pickens level and leave it at that. And if something arises, Allen Robinson will be available on my waiver wire.
Yeah, I'll just say this. Of all the players that I listed here in a recent draft with the keeper league where I'm in the Dirty Dozen league where I split the championship last year in an odd historic situation with DLF, I did take Allen Robinson and Jayden Reed in the late rounds as my two kind of high risk reward players. So I'm buying it for the value that I can get in that.
Some are always dump them. Some we're always looking for is previously productive players with a path to regaining some of that previous productivity, right? Yeah. And I mean, I'm one of my players this year for the reasons we talked about. Michael Thomas, I think
I'm totally there. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and honestly, his success last year was pretty solid right up until he got hurt, and so he's got to stay healthy, get all that. So does Allen Robinson. So do a lot of these players. But this is the profile you're looking for. I mean, if I'm sitting there at the tail of a draft, I probably have shares of both those guys, Jayden Reed and Allen Robinson. I feel a little more comfortable with the Allen Robinson share because I've seen it before, right? And so, and that doesn't mean anything other than I've seen it before, but it does mean something to me.
Well, Steve Volk is a big fan of you. He's a friend of mine, and he's. I'm going to ask on his behalf. Feel it or fuck it, Bill Frisell.
Yeah, I don't want to disappoint anyone. I'll kind of feel it a little bit.
Okay, I'm going to say fuck it a little bit just because I don't have many of his stuff. Doesn't mean he's not unbelievable, but it's just not my. It just hasn't been my thing as of late. So
I want to throw a couple breakout candidates at you. Sam Howell, feel it or fuck it, as a breakout. Feel it or fuck it.
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling with the receivers that he has. I'm feeling the opportunity for him to, if breakout is 3,500 yards, not top 12 quarterback, but top 15, top 16. I'm feeling that.
Bijan Robinson returning first round value.
Fuck it. I'm gonna say that he's more of a second round guy, close but no cigar.
Jahmyr Gibbs, third round value.
Feeling that. I think
my work here is done.
Yeah.
A couple more, just quickies. James Cook, feel him or fuck him.
Probably, I'm going to say feel it in PPR, fuck him in everything else.
You get one choice here: Sky Moore, Rashee Rice, Justin Ross.
For this year, Sky Moore.
For this year.
For Dynasty, Justin Ross.
Zay Flowers, feel him or fuck him.
Feel him.
This year,
feel him.
Marvin Mims Jr.
Fuck it.
Kendre Miller.
Fuck it.
Alec Pierce.
Feel it.
Roschon Johnson.
Fuck it.
All right.
Yeah. I know it's not a lot. Those were quick, but we'll see how it goes. I'm probably 1 for 10 out of those, but we'll find out in about 8 weeks. where we're at. Well,
I can't believe you don't listen to jazz guitars. That's surprising me.
oh, I do all the time. Pat Martino, Pat Metheny.
Oh.
Feel it. Bill Frisell I like, but he's a little different in terms of the stuff that he does. It's just not really as much in the vein of stuff that I like to listen
Albie
to.
Miola, Feel Motherfucker.
Feel him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stop at a moment of agreement.
Yeah. Montgomery, West Montgomery, Jim
right.
Hall,
Going back
all
old
feeling
school. All right.
all
right.
We're all good. Bill Frisell's just a little, his stuff's a little different, and it's not bad. I just haven't really gotten into it enough to say feel it. So I guess I have to default with fuck it.
We'll just end on a George Benson moment.
Oh, that'll work. Yeah, absolutely. Totally feeling that.
All right.
All right.
Let's go do something. Love you. Bye.
Bye.